So hello to everyone. So this DevSecOps conference, and this is the first session. I'll be kind of setting the context overall. We'll be discussing a few of the tools, and there'll be like hands-on demo as well. So I'm really excited for this, and hope you are too. So before getting started, a bit about myself. I'm Director of Technical Evangelism working at Civo. Civo is a company that builds managed Kubernetes service based on K3s and some of the other compute and other stuff which is coming up. So you can check that out. I'm a CNCF ambassador. I'm all the Kubernetes certified except for KCNA because I'm one of the SMEs over there. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm very active over there, tweeting out the latest and the greatest in tech. Same with the YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that. I post with the amazing people. Some of them are in the chat as well. The live streams and some of the videos. I'm also author of Kubernetes CKS, which is the Kubernetes Security certification. So let's get started. So DevSecOps. Like first, let's set the context of the conference itself. So in a traditional way of deploying the software, like modern way, not the traditional way, we have been using the DevOps pipeline. So if you are not familiar with the DevOps pipeline, it's kind of some stages which are there, and each stage has a specific purpose, like pushing the code. So you have written the code, you're pushing the code, then you're building can be in the form of Docker images, then you're deploying it, and then you're releasing it. So all these are different stages, and they form a complete pipeline, the complete DevOps pipeline from code to the deployment to the release and deploying that to the production. So that's kind of DevOps. And now where how this term is now getting popular, the DevSecOps. So it's not something very new. Every time you release a software, obviously it has to go under the security audit, security checks, because you are releasing a new version of the software. And if it's not secure, then probably you are putting your customers data at risk. You are putting all the credit card informations, if it's an e-commerce site, at risk. You are putting the personal information at risk. So there are multiple things that you are putting at risk that can make you vulnerable, that can get the attacker access to your product, your releases, which will not be good. So obviously the security researchers are there. They will test the stuff out, and then they'll go back. Okay, here's what the things are missing. The vulnerabilities, you haven't patched the OS yet. You are using a wrong kind of image over there. Please use this particular image, and many other things. Now the security aspect has changed from traditional aspects. Why? Because traditionally the microservices architecture was not completely there. The containerization and the Kubernetes services were not there. So now with the microservices architecture, the cloud which is there, the containerization layer which is there, Kubernetes layer which is there, the attack surfaces have increased. So there has to be like new ways of researching. There has to be new tools that should help the security people. And also, since we are moving in a automated way of the DevOps pipeline, there should not be a bottleneck at the end of the pipeline that, okay, we release everything and then the security person is testing. It has to be at every stage, it has to be at every layer, it has to be at every place that we are doing. So basically security has to be in the mindset. So like DevOps is a culture. Similarly, DevSecOps also follows the kind of similar pattern, similar culture. So you have to have prepare the mindset where the developers, operation, and the security people, they all three are collaborating and working together. They know about the policies. Like you are committing the code, you do the static analysis. You do in the GitHub actions, you do that. For building, you first write the Docker file itself with the Docker best practices, and not using the using the verified images, using the signed images. Container scanning, that when you're deploying, you have Kubernetes layer on top of it. So make sure your Kubernetes layer itself is secure, your infrastructure is secure, the cloud you're running, you're following the best practices according to the cloud vendor provided. So all these has to be there, because then only you'll fail fast and you'll fix fast. Else you will be kind of dependent, and it will take more time. So there is no kind of you are opposing the meaning of DevOps. You are opposing the meaning of automation. So now when you will be like having each layer, each security layer added at every step, then it makes like a complete DevSecOps process, or you can call it a process, culture, a mindset, or obviously there are tools involved, and the tools has also evolved over the period of time. It's not only the traditional tools, because Kubernetes wasn't existent before, it exists now. So the tools to monitor that, the tools to kind of benchmark that, or to see if it is according to security best practices, they have to be there. So um, so those tools everybody has to understand. Then everybody needs to understand collectively, the developers, operations team, and the security team, and then they have to work together to provide a complete security. So that also you can call it as a supply chain security. So you will be having the chaining of events, and you'll be having the security at each level. So that's what in my heads is what I feel DevSecOps is. If you have like kind of some different approach or things like that, then do tweet them out. I would love to hear your thoughts as well. Now, a very popular 4 C's of security in the cloud native ecosystem. So when you talk about the cloud native ecosystem, there are 4 C's, which is like the cloud, which is basically the infrastructure layer. Then on top of the infrastructure, you're having the cluster, which is the Kubernetes layer. On top of that, you're having containers in which your code is actually running. So each layer requires scanning. That's why like security has to be at all layers, security has to be everywhere, because the attack surfaces have grown. So this is what I was telling you, the attack surfaces has grown even more than it was in the past. That is why the number of attacks, the number of vulnerabilities has also grown over the past. And this is the reason why there are number of tools that are increasing with respect to like Kubernetes cloud for security, because the attacks are rising. There has to be a fix for that, and there might be some open source tool that solves that particular problem, so you should use that. So first obviously is the kind of data center or the cloud. So when you talk about cloud, each cloud vendor is having some certain set of best practices that they publish, so you can follow that. Exposing like minimum number of nodes to the internet, limiting the control plane access, etcd encryption, host operating system scans. Obviously the host OS also has to be secure, else you can be compromised, things can be compromised. Then you are also having the cluster layer. So in Kubernetes there are a lot of things, like first the Kubernetes components itself have to be secure. Then on top of that, what you are deploying has to be secure. So there are multiple parts to it when it comes to Kubernetes. So like the AAA is authorization, authentication, and admission, so that has to be there. CIS scan, NSA scans, which is there, like NSA hardening guide, which was published very recently last year. So that has to be, like, you can follow the best practices from that as well. Like, we will be talking about the tools that helps you do that. Network policies to be done, pod security, which is there, policies, toolings. So you can see, like, earlier it was OPA, which is open policy agent, but now there are multiple tools which have come up in the past 1.5 years. Like Keverno has evolved a lot in the past 1 year. You have Kube Warden, which is based on WASM policies. Then OPA has a Gatekeeper project, which is for Kubernetes specifically. Then obviously TLS has to be everywhere. Secrets and the encryption at rest, you should kind of take care of that. Then when it comes to the container layer, the images. So first, yeah, Dockerfile best practices has to be followed. Then you should always do container scanning. You should use the signed images. Make sure you're not using any privileged users inside your Docker files. So all these best practices should also be followed. Then you have the code level. So you do static code analysis, you do dynamic code analysis. There are various tools for that with respect to the language that you're using. Then TLS and MTLS between the services, because you might be using like service meshes, so you should be using that. Limiting the port ranges within the application that you are developing. Dependency scanning. So you all know, like Log4j has been there, and many tools out there is using Log4j internally. They didn't know that they were vulnerable. So like that, the dependency scanning has to be there. Then the attack tooling. So there are very famous attacks which are there, and tools that can prevent that. So make sure the basic set of attacks, which are very famous ones, you are using the tooling for that as well. So like this, you can see, there are many scenarios, many attack surfaces in all the layers, starting from the infrastructure to the code, that you have to think of. Now, a lot of things are there, but when it is thought from the start, when it is thought from the code level, from the committing the code from the left side, that's why we say always, shift left. So from the left hand side, then throughout the pipeline, you'll take care of that in each steps, and you'll kind of get to the best scenario or the secure system. Obviously no system is fully secure, people will always find vulnerabilities. It's just that you move towards better system, you move towards a better setup, you move towards a better infrastructure which is secure. Now, in the CNCF landscape, you have a security and compliance. You can see the number of tools that have, the number of tools that have rise in the past. So, Open Policy OPA, which is Open Policy Agent, is graduated, and two of the tools that we'll be discussing are actually based on the REGO policies, which OPA uses. So I think that's pretty cool. Falco will be discussing about today. Falco is a runtime security tool, so it's also very great. And then there are some other tools like Terrascan. We'll be kind of exploring. Then there are plenty of tools people are developing. Why people are developing? Because they care about the security. Like Kubebench is there, Kubehunter is there, so they care about the security, and security is important. Again, the same kind of statement I'm giving again, because the number of attacks are rising, people want their systems to be secure, so that is why the number of tools are also increasing, and they will rise. So let's talk about Falco first. So Falco is a cloud native runtime security project. It is a CNCF incubating project as of now, and it fits in the security landscape detection layer. So like one is the prevention layer, one is the detection layer, and Falco sits in the detection layer of that. Now, how Falco works is very kind of a neat, because it directly tracks the syscalls which are going to the kernel via the apps. So Falco parses those syscalls and checks against the rules which are defined in the config, a YAML file that has predefined amazing set of rules, and you can customize those rules, and then it will check all the syscalls which are happening against those rules and give you the alerts and the violation that you can set up on top of that. So if you like any of the things that I'm saying, just tweet that out, because I want like people in the end to be saying, what they learned actually from the presentation. Now, how Falco works is on a very high level. You have application, and application is running on Kubernetes. Kubernetes is running on the operating system, and you have two things over here, which is the user space and the kernel space. So the Falco engine will be living in the user space, and the Falco driver gets installed when you install Falco in the kernel space. Now, there are two types of drivers. If you are on the previous kernel versions, then you have the kernel ring buffer module. If you have the latest kernel versions, which suppose kind of eBPFs, then you'll be having the eBPF probe. So again, a very amazing use case of eBPF, which is there. So the application calls Kubernetes, the call goes to here, and internally, in the end, it is a syscall that is happening in the kernel, which the Falco tries to monitor. So it will be going via the ring buffer or eBPF probe, depending on the kernel version that you are having, and then it goes to the engine and validates against the set of rules that you have defined in the config YAML, and then it gives the output. So there are additional plugins that let you extend or enrich the data using like the cloud logs and things like that. You can also have the audit logs to track the Kube API server, and the output can, there are various output formats like HTTP, gRPC, Prometheus, std out, and a very good community project out there, Falco Sidekick, lets you kind of extend the output to even more places like Slack, S3, serverless, Loki. So it even extends that. So I think that's very interesting how Falco works, and it has been grown massively. Like any cloud native system you see out there, they tend to use Falco because of the power that it is having, and the number of rules that you can configure. So it's kind of amazing. So definitely check that out. And from Kubernetes certification perspective, CKS1 Falco is a very important topic as well. So I think that itself gives you the credibility, how important this particular piece of project is. Next up is Terascan. Again, very interesting tool that I recently came across, thanks to Sangam, who told me about Terascan. So Terascan actually is a tool, again, is a command line tool, fully the CLI for the with the developer focus. Now, I really like the whole idea of the companies who are developing the tools in a developer oriented manner, because it kind of resonates with how people are working actually, and how they would want to see the results, how they would want to see the outputs. So Terascan is basically a tool to detect the compliance security violations across infrastructure as code, to mitigate the risk before provisioning the cloud native infrastructure. Now it is not only limited to the Terraform, which is by different set of providers like AWS, Azure, GCP, but it also scans like Docker files, the static YAML files, Helm, customize. So it has that the input, the flag where you can provide, okay, I want in this particular directory, I want to scan the Docker files. So please load the Docker file policies and scan my repository with respect to the Docker file, and let me know if my Docker file is up, is in the best practices. Same with the Kubernetes. So these are the YAML files. So tell me that if the YAML files are fine, or is there, the resource request and limits are missing, or if any other thing is missing. So that's pretty interesting. It also integrates with GitHub, and it also, like, Terraform obviously is there. And you can see, like, there are a lot of open source tools out there, and this is with respect to Kubernetes. And Kubernetes was, I think, very recently added to Terascan. It was not from the beginning. So still Terascan is over there. Now Terascan has a very interesting thing which is called a Rego editor. So it is a kind of a VS Code extension that you can directly install in the VS Code, and you will be able to get the template of the policy. Basically, you don't have to write the policy from scratch, everything. So you get that Rego policy, and then you can customize that based on the needs. So that is very interesting, the Terascan Rego editor. So make sure to check that out. I'll be doing a demo in the end on Terascan, so just to show you how things work, how it works. Then comes Kubescape, another very interesting tool. So this tool actually came after what you call the NSA hardening guide. So the NSA hardening guide came last year, and after, I think, a month or two, this tool also came up. Since it was the first open source tool that adheres to the NSA hardening guide, so that is why it became very popular. So Kubescape, again, built for developers. I like that approach very much. Assures that every Kubernetes cluster, microservices, pod remains secure from development to production, from configuration to runtime. Now Kubescape can be integrated with your CI system, CI/CD systems like your Jenkins. Very simple guides are also available. Very simple tutorials are available on the documentation how to integrate Kubescape with Jenkins. It obviously scans your YAML files, Helm charts, customize running clusters, and it supports multiple frameworks. There are frameworks like NSA, CISA, then MITRE, then ARMO best, means the best practices or the best Rego policies based on whatever ARMO thinks are the best. So again, this particular tool is also based on Rego policies. So there are Rego policies out there which is being used. So that you can see the power of kind of Rego policies which are out there. On top of these tools, yes, you can and you should be using some of the other toolings as well, like the Kyverno or Gatekeeper or whatsoever out there, because you need policies. You can have more policies, you can have more control. Admission controller, yeah, just forgot one thing, that Terascan for Kubernetes is also having an admission controller which they recently added, that you can integrate with. Now, Terrascan, in the end, these two features are really cool, which is the RBAC visualizer. I really like it because it gives you the whole visualization on how your RBAC looks like. It's very cool because it's very good for understanding how in your cluster the roles and the role bindings and all those things are working. And then you have the pass scans. You can have different clusters. You can have image scanning, and they have a good UI as well. So that is kind of their SaaS offering, but I haven't seen the kind of pricing for that. So I am for now I'm assuming that it's anybody can kind of use it. So it's very simple. So before the thank you, I would like to show you. Okay, first let's do the demo. Let me share the terminal window now. share screen. Okay, so I hope you are able to see the terminal window. And what we are going to do is, let's first go with Terrascan. Terrascan. So again, this is Terascan. I have already downloaded the Terascan CLI. You can easily download that. That is not a very fancy thing to show, to be honest. So Terascan is there, and these are the set of available commands. Init just initializes all the policies. So that's what init does, and then scan will scan the um, policies. So let's do a Terascan scan, and let's give -I initialize the policies, and I want only Docker. What it will do is, I have told like do the scans with the IAC type Docker. So it will do the Docker file scan. So it will search for the Docker file and it will do that type of scan. So that is what it has done. So it says that ensure the range of port is from 0 to 65535 and things like that. So I can actually show you the Docker file as well. This is this very simple kind of Docker file, and they are actually updating so that even the secrets and all they can be mitigated using this. Like you should obviously not expose the secrets as well. Now let's do a simple scan. Now this particular thing will scan in this particular directory, so that is what it will tell, like IAC type all, because I haven't specified that. So it will do all the checks which are there, all the policies with respect to all the files which are present in this particular folder. So there are a lot of, kind of, not lot, but there are some files over here, like some YAML files over there, that it will kind of check and it will tell me what all things are there. Now they are very interesting. So let me show you this one. So minimize the admission of root containers. So in the deploy.yaml, there is a root container which is there. You haven't specified the readiness probe. CPU limits are not set. So all these things it will tell you. And with respect to the kind of severity level, so containers should not run with allow privileged escalation. Containers should not run with allow privilege escalation in the deploy.yaml. So that is how it scans, and there are different options, different IAC types. So if you just give Terraform scan -I and you specify like Docker or K8s or customize or Helm, so it will check that. So that is how Terrascan works. Now let's move on to Kubescape. There are two aspects to it. One is obviously the CLI. So Kubescape, this is there. I already have a CO Kubernetes cluster, so kubectl get nodes. So Kubescape cluster is already there. I'm not the Kubescape cluster. Kubescape is installed, and I already have a Kubernetes cluster running on CO Kubernetes. So we'll do a scan. So you can see Kubescape scan will scan the current running cluster and the YAML files. So let's do a Kubescape scan. So security scanner is starting. I can even enable host scan if I want to kind of run it for the hosts. It is downloading all the policies. Policies have been downloaded, accessing the cluster objects, and now it will give me a kind of list of all the things which are valid, not valid, or which should be changed. So it got the cluster. The cluster name is Greenstone, which is correct, and it has scanned these many stuff. So this is the summary. But if we go above, we will be able to see very good thing, which is the failure and the remediation step. I really like that. So you can see, for example, so these are the file where the memory limit is not set. So in the default namespace, there are a lot of deployments and the stateful set. And the kube system namespace also, there are some, and you can see the resource memory limit is not set. So I think it is a kind of neat way to do it, because that's the kind of control. This is the Armo doc for that, and this is the description, and these are the set of the resources which it has scanned and let us know. So similarly, the CPU limit, similarly the resource policies. So you can see everything is kind of there. Now even the RBAC permission, so attackers with relevant RBAC permission can use kubectl forward command, and you can see these are the kind of interesting groups which they have they have given. So that is interesting. Now it might be difficult to visualize in this particular manner, so they have a fancy UI as well, you can see in the end, like in a user friendly UI. So you just need to I think sign up over here, and I already have done that. So let me switch back to the other screen, and let me show you how that looks like, because that is very interesting. So this is how the Kubescape UI looks like. It gives you the risks in form of, the greenstone cluster is there, and it has done the NSA hardening guide. There are actually other hardening guides as well, which you can actually select. So if I click here, now it will give me the score over time, and it will give me the score with respect to if I run multiple stuff. And these are the policies like armo best policies or devops best policies or NSA guide, and all these checks. And you can see with respect to these, what are the like allowed host path, allowed host network access, and this is the ID with respect to that you can check what it actually means. So I think this is a very interesting view of that. Then you have image scanning. So image scanning is also great. So it scans all the images with respect to the vulnerability level. It's in beta, but I think it looks pretty neat with respect to the images. RBAC visualizer. So you have the RBAC visualizer for the cluster. So you can see this is how the RBAC visualizer. So you can see this is what it controls. This is what it controls. So you can actually see the visualization. I think that's very interesting and neat feature. Then in the settings section, if you go, which you can go from here very simply, you can see that integration. So you can actually integrate it with Jenkins, Circle CI, GitLab, Azure DevOps. So if I click over here, it goes to the documentation and lets the basic setup, like from creating a job, adding a build step, and doing how to integrate that. So I think that's also pretty neat. So that is what Kubescape is. So you have different frameworks that you can use. You can add a framework from or you can create your own framework with respect to certain policies that you can do. You can skip the policies that you do not want to use. So I think many things are there, so you can control that as well. And this is the Kubescape repository. So if you like that, actually you can see like it has already close to 4.9k stars, and it is not a too old repository. So you can see the kind of adoption for Kubescape. So make sure you check that out and contribute. This is the Terascan documentation, where you have Kubernetes, and you can see actually the policies. So you have policies with respect to GitHub, Kubernetes, GCP, Azure, and you can see these are the set of policies that they already have in Terrascan. So that is pretty interesting that you can check. And another thing that I want to tell you is this is the Terrascan repository. I know Sangam will talk more about that. But now when I go to the releases of the Terrascan and I see that it was released 3 days ago, and it fixes a new CADES policy with the CVE number. And when I go to this particular issue, it redirects me to the actual CVE. So it was a high rated CVE with respect to Nginx ingress, and that was kind of fixed in 1.13. So I think that's how these companies are kind of working. There is a CVE immediately, like people start working on writing the Rego policy for that, and that gets integrated in the product, and it is released so that you can scan against that particular vulnerability as well. So the CVEs will keep on coming, the tools will keep on getting mature. So keep an eye on all these security tools. Keep an eye on the security landscape, CNCF security landscape. That is the place you should be kind of looking at. You will see much more tools added to this particular landscape. Even the supply chain security space, you will see a lot of tools getting added over there. So I think with that, I would kind of conclude this particular session that um, security is at every layer, and you should not skip security at any piece, any piece of the puzzle, starting from the infra layer, containerization, Kubernetes containers, code. So all levels has to be there. Like if you use Golang, there is a Golang analysis tool, static analysis tool. You should do that because it helps you do that. It helps you cater those vulnerabilities, and it will not be a long time before this the log4j vulnerability that occurred, it might not happen in future. It might happen, but the tools will get to a maturity level, but that it might be able to detect those beforehand. So I think that's where these security toolings are going. Like log4j is there, these security tools are there, you can actually scan those vulnerabilities, because security mishappenings will be there. People will try to hack stuff or find the vulnerability. So I think many tools are there. There is no kind of single best tool for everything. So probably you need to kind of check with respect to what case you are actually seeing. Like Trivi is out there for a specific case, Kubench is out there for a specific case. Now these tools like Terascan and Kubescape have come, which have like extensive policies, and people keep on writing the policies, and they can extend that because it's Rego policy is very customizable. People can extend that to write their own policies. So make sure you contribute over there. And then you have the runtime security tooling. Your Falco is there. You have to kind of have the syscalls which are going in. Are they kind of secure? Spawning a shell, spawning a root inside a container, do you want to have an alert on that, or at least a specific, like you have a MySQL DB, you might, if anybody does a root shell, then you might want to get an alert on that. Why not you get an alert on that? So I think that would be good. So I think with that, uh, secure the systems. I hope you have the DevSecOps understanding now, the cloud network security landscape. What does cloud network security means? Some of the toolings that I explained, and which spaces to watch out for. So thank you so much for tuning in for this keynote.